Welcome back to another episode, another one of the Diamond Download. I'm Cardinal Mason. This is your host, Chase Diamond. Chase, how you doing?
Dude, I'm doing well. I think we talked about this last week off camera. I've been shocked by like the diverse number of people that have been listening to this. I know like Jimmy Kim listened to this.
Jimmy
Some EP
Kimmel?
that I went was that?
Jimmy Kimmel listens to this?
No, Jimmy Kim from Sunlane. And then I went to lunch last week with like the VP of sales at a tech SaaS company. He listened to it. You mentioned like a bunch of your friends listened to it. It's like really random, but not in a bad way. Like who listens to this? It's kind of cool. How are you doing?
Dude, I love that's a good way to start it off. Social proof. Get people wanting more. Everyone needs to know the biggest names in late night talk show. Jimmy Kimmel is listening to our show, man. So yeah, I mean, also too, apparently the Sun Lane, dude, I love Jimmy. I just tweeted at you before this. Jimmy, okay, real quick, shout out Jimmy again, because we do this literally every week. Ron from Obby was like, hey, Jimmy, it'd be great if we could have sort of like a floating like text whatever bar where you could bold, underline, strike through, it italicized as you scroll down the page, so you don't have to whatever. And he turned it around. I don't know how fast he did it, but he made a video saying, "Hey, thanks for the shout out. We made this feature." It was like quick, right?
Yeah, I think it was like under a week. I think it was maybe days. I saw that tweet too, and I was trying to go back to see when it was requested, and I think it was like sub a week. It might have even been like a couple days,
Wow.
which is crazy. Yeah, I was gonna look for it, but so Jimmy said that today. I was on the 26th. Oh, actually, sorry. So it was a couple weeks. I think it was last 26th. So it was right around a month it took them to build it out. But that was like a new thing that probably wasn't on their roadmap. So still very, very quick.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like a DJ taking requests that is like not in the queue. And it's like, oh, like I'm playing Drake. You want to hear Sweet Caroline? All right, let me see how I can work that in. And then 3 songs later, you're hearing Sweet Caroline, even though it's supposed to be like a bunch of drill UK trap music. So very good for
I
Jimmy.
like it.
Okay, so dude, let's jump right into this. We got three banger topics for our people today. The first one is how to get out of a rut. So, I mean, dude, we go through this all the time. It doesn't matter where you're at in your entrepreneurial journey. It doesn't matter how emotionally mature you are. It doesn't matter how rich you are. It doesn't matter how where you are in your life. Everyone gets in these little ruts for days or weeks or sometimes even months at a time. I'm assuming that as an entrepreneur who's been in the game for over a decade, you've been through a handful of these. What does it look like for you when you're in a rut, and then how do you get out of it?
Yeah, it's funny. Like for me, my biggest like downtimes lately are like when the algo isn't super nice and friendly. I'm like, dang it, this sucks. Then like it just messes with me mentally. And I think
Yeah,
for me, like specifically that, but also outside of that, you just have to zoom out. So like when I look at like my impressions for a given day or a given period of days, it's like, oh man, this sucks. But when then I zoom out and I look at like where I was 3 months ago or 6 months ago or a year ago, and I see just like the chart going up towards the right, I think it just gives you perspective. So I think like when you're in things, it just feels so intense and it feels overwhelming and it feels like this is going to take over your life. And then, dude, a few days go by, a few weeks go by, that feeling that you had, you don't even remember it anymore. So I think it's important to take a step away, take a deep breath. I mean, and even like go exercise, right? Like take a shower, go on a walk, call a friend, listen to some music. So I think just like a distraction and kind of just putting your mind at ease and just being under the notion and understanding that like this pain, this rut, this whatever you want to call it is temporary, right? I think we hear a lot like with athletes, like, oh, someone's having a slump, right? And because they're athletes, right? Like this ebbs and flows and it comes in waves. So I don't know necessarily how they do it. I would imagine they just probably have more attempts at bat and they're practicing a little harder and they're working a little bit harder. So that way, whether it's good luck or it's will or it's force, they're just going to find a way to kind of crawl out of it. So those are kind of my initial thoughts. What about yourself?
dude, everything you said is pretty on point. Yeah, you especially like the ability to compare yourself to like where you were before. If you feel like you're not doing that great, then you have to like set a look back at your history and be like, where was I? Like for example, today was like the worst day in business in a long time. We did $3,800, and like we've consistently been doing like 12K days like every single day for the last like I don't know how long, like 2 months now. And so like now I'm looking at this and I'm like, oh my god, like what are we gonna do? And now I'm thinking like back, a year ago or even 6 months ago, like a 3K day would have been like phenomenal, like literally like worth partying over. So yeah, like I think what people should do is like you should get into a habit of journaling every day and like actually track your mood. I did this when I was going through like a really hard time like a couple of years ago. I would journal every single day and sort of like rate my mood out of 10 on the day.
Interesting.
And then you can kind of see like why your mood was the way it was. And also you can see like if you were an 8 that day and today you're feeling like a 2, but like all the circumstances are better, you can kind of justify it logically and realize like, yeah, I mean, things just are the way they are. Like there's no reason I should be feeling this way. And sometimes you can logic your way out of it, but most of the time, like you gotta just be nice to yourself for a couple of days and just remember that like if you're ever feeling like that, like nothing is ever permanent. Like if you're feeling down, just know that in a couple of weeks you're gonna be like high as a kite again and you'll be okay. That's a good way to think about it.
Yeah, dude, it's crazy. Like to the point that you made, like before, like, and I think this is all about like leveling up. Is like before in the past, if you would ever accomplish X goal, whether it was a social goal, a financial goal, a health goal, a weight goal, like whatever it was, you would be like over the moon and be like, this is the best day ever. It can't get any better. And then you get there, right? And then you're like, oh wow, like I'm here. And then you set the goal and the bar higher, right? So I think like inherently as like high achievers, entrepreneurs, 1% type mindset, like if you're not feeling disappointed in certain things, you're not growing, right? Because it's like if you're not like, for example, if today if just shy of 4,000 is like a bummer of a day, if you look back 3 years, you probably would have been lucky to make $400 for a day, right? And
Mhm.
then now it's like your new goals are 12 a day. And then once you get to 12, it's like, you want to get to 20. And then if you're still at 12, you're like, dang, this is such a bummer. But I think
Yeah.
that's the best thing is just like constantly push yourself and set the goal so far in advance that if you fall a little bit short, while you might be temporarily disappointed, when you look back at where you've come, it's a mile apart. So I think that's awesome.
Yeah, man. Good stuff. Okay, next one. How to know what your next big business opportunity is. So I sort of wrestle with a couple of different ideas of or how to word this kind of thing. But like I think this is probably a thing that a lot of entrepreneurs deal with. I wrote an email kind of similar to this. But like everything we do, we know that it has sort of like a runway of like, I don't know, 3 to 5 years. And sometimes like because I know that about everything I'm doing right now, like 3 to 5 years probably is how long it'll last. And
Yeah.
I think about like, what am I gonna do when I'm 30? And then I start to stress myself out thinking like, am I gonna have any good ideas by the time I'm 30, or am I just gonna have no juice left and just kind of like be back at zero? Like what like do you have a formula for sort of thinking about big opportunities and then how to build them and like what to know is like the thing you should be taking action on?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think like just naturally being curious. I think you're very curious. I'm very curious. We're just very interested. We understand how business works, and we always are trying to like reverse engineer anything, whether it's a funnel that got us to buy, or whether someone's told us about this story of this entrepreneur, and we want to go dive into it. So I think like just being naturally curious. Um, I used to worry, not that I don't worry. I obviously still have some doubt about like what I'm going to do or what I want to work on, but just knowing that we're naturally curious, there's so many things that you can explore. And for me, like about a year ago, I wanted to take LinkedIn really, really seriously. So I started reverse engineering like what were the people doing that worked, and what they were doing other than posting good content and lots of good content is they were either bartering or paying people to engage with their stuff. So I started paying someone, right? And I started paying, a few $1,000s a month to grow my own LinkedIn. And then fast forward until a couple months ago, I'm like, huh, I have my LinkedIn that's big now. I've been paying someone to do this. Like this idea has been right in front of me the whole time. I just never acted upon it, right? So I think like when you're just in the motion of doing things and you're just curious and you're just testing and trying and you're always open to learning, I just think like the opportunities are in front of you, and it's whether you can, locate them and pick them up and kind of massage them a little bit to see which one has legs or longevity. And I also too like with that, like I have like this kind of like this loose operating system where like we've talked about how I suck at SaaS. SaaS is really hard. I don't think I'll ever start a SaaS. Obviously we'll join a SaaS or partner with SaaS and those types of things. But it really comes down to me, like I'm good at services. I'm not good at physical products. I'll never probably start an e-commerce brand, but I'm good at services. Our agency for e-commerce, my LinkedIn growth thing, consulting, those types of things. So anything within those realms, I'm interested in. And the latest thing has been this concept of a productized service. which essentially is like a glorified agency, but it's focusing on a specific offering or kind of a small amount of offerings, almost like a small menu. Like if you go to like a Chick-fil-A or like a Raising Cane's or an In-N-Out, the menu is really small. And that's kind of more like a productized service where if you go to like a restaurant that has 10 pages worth of things, I kind of equate that more to like an agency that kind of can do anything and everything. What are your thoughts?
I mean, I asked this question more so like for advice.
Yeah.
Not that I'm looking for like the next thing to do, but like I don't really have an answer for this one. I think it takes time in the game to sort of realize like where your ideas come from. I think a lot of it too is really sort of chance and fate.
Yeah.
And like every business idea that you have that really works sort of hits like a lightning strike, where it's like it's just something that was just it just appeared there and you kind of have to jump on it and that's just it is what it is. Because like you know what made me think of this actually? I watched a video. You know who Mike Posner is?
Well, it sounds very familiar.
The pill in Ibiza, that guy.
Oh yeah. Okay, the artist. Yeah.
He was talking about how like he was like a big artist back in like 2009 to 2011, had a couple of hits, and then for years, for like 5 years in a row, couldn't get one to land. And then he was just like he had sort of like a crisis where I was thinking, and he was just talking about how like he didn't think he was going to be able to do anything. Like he was just bored, he had no purpose or whatever. And then he wrote that song and obviously revived his career and everything was good. But it was kind of ironic because the song was about having nothing to do because you're like a nobody now that you're like a one hit wonder. And then that brought him back to the map. Anyway, I think a lot of people kind of go through that in business, and like I'm just trying to find ways to mitigate that happening to me.
Yeah, one thing to add is like, I mean, I think last week did the interview with Starter Story come out? Like right there, right? Like if you're naturally curious, you find sites out there like Starter Story and some of the others that literally are documenting entrepreneurs' journeys, where they're at, how they had the idea, what they did. I think finding sites and databases like that that just have like a plethora of ideas, whatever one is like, oh, I have the skills to do that, or oh, that's interesting. I didn't realize you could make money with that. I even think finding like databases or sites like that are really interesting for you just to go down the rabbit hole of like how people are making money. And it's going to probably surprise you. And by the way, great interview, by the way. I listened to that. I think I texted you on the weekend or on Friday or something. You crushed that.
Yeah. No, I think that's one thing that beginners have over us is like for if you're used to sort of like if you have like a regular job, right? And you're trying to find a business that can make you 100 to 500K a year, that's super easy. Like there's so many things you can do. You like probably an agency or some sort of service thing like copywriting is probably the best way to do that.
Yeah.
But to find something where it's like, all right, how can I net 5 million a year, 10 million a year? Those opportunities are harder to come by.
Yeah.
But I mean, dude, I think it's just like I think they just reveal themselves to you, and I think that's like the point of business, and that's why we sort of value it is because it is scarce. Those opportunities don't come around every day, and I think, yeah, if you can snag one while it's hot and you can do really well, then that's a chance to build a crazy amount of wealth.
100%.
Last question. A company in our space that you're bullish on. Self-explanatory, like anyone that maybe we follow them on Twitter or like they're sort of in the world with us where it's like you just think they're doing better than everybody else, are going to crush everybody.
Yeah, I think there's a few. Like a few that came to mind was like Workweek. I think you're familiar with it. I don't know if most aren't, but I think like the best way to describe Workweek is like it's a media company of creators and influencers that by adding all of the individual parts, like the sum is greater. So they'll have like certain verticals and niches of creators and influencers that they partner with or they buy or they own a percentage of. I think the model is a little bit different. And what Workweek's premise is they'll provide like back office, whether it's everything like we'll make sure the scheduling goes live, we'll find and we'll book and we'll deal with sponsors, we'll deal with helping grow the newsletter. It's like everything that creators don't love or wish they had more time to do or wanted to hire someone to do in some sense, Workweek help with. They are venture backed, right? So I don't know like if that's supposed to be a venture business or not. I don't actually know how they're doing. On the outside, it seems like they're doing well. That seems like a really cool company. I've had not the exact idea, but like a similar idea, more around like bundling newsletters together for like the arbitrage. So say you had like 10 newsletters and they each charge $1,000, right? So, that would be $10,000. Could you go sell that same package to an advertiser for 15 or 20,000? And you as the salesperson or the seller could take the arbitrage of the 5 or 10K, in between. So I think that's kind of like a really interesting business and model. And then do you follow Nick Huber? He's like the sweaty startup guy by any chance?
Yeah.
Did you see his recent? He did like a long post probably a couple of days ago. I was texting him about it, where he broke down like all of his businesses, how well they're doing.
Text, you're friends with him?
I wouldn't say we're friends. Like we were kind of engaging with each other's stuff on LinkedIn. Like we would send each other texts, like, "Hey, engage with this, engage with that." And he posted
Oh,
this
what?
thread, and I was like, "Dude, this is great. Like this is awesome." And he sent me like a really nice text back saying, like, "Thanks, man. Like really cool to see your growth as well." But he's really interesting. Where like his whole goal is like him at the center as like this influencer creator media company. I think he was spending like 30 or 50 grand a month just growing his personal brand with like social ads and newsletter ads. And then he was partnering with a bunch of operators. He had like an SEO firm. He had like a cost segregation firm. He had a hiring firm in the US. He partnered with someone called Shepherd that does hiring overseas. So all in all, I think he's got like half a dozen to a dozen businesses that all center around like him going viral and being able to plug things each direction. So I think that model is really interesting. And I think we're starting to see a lot of like companies partner with folks like that, give away a meaningful amount of equity because it seems like he's driving substantial revenue. I think he was saying that he's doing about $1 million a month for the companies that he owns or works with. I think on the back of Twitter, his newsletter, maybe LinkedIn. So I think those were the ones that came to mind for me. What about you? Any that you're seeing?
That's dope. I mean, yeah, dude, that just shows the power of a personal brand, like a really solid personal brand.
Yeah.
And it's funny too, because I only really see him on Twitter. Is he on any other platforms?
He is on LinkedIn. He's definitely not as big. I think Twitter is like his moneymaker for sure. Nick Huber. We haven't engaged as much lately on Twitter. Let's see where he's at. He's got 52,000 followers on LinkedIn, so not terrible. He says he has about 180,000 people on his newsletter, so that's pretty substantial as well.
Yeah. And it's probably super high quality, like business owners too.
Yeah,
It's not just like
100%.
interesting. Okay. I mean, dude, like I think for me, I think it's a little bit late to call it for Kill Crew. I think Kill Crew's already too big for me to be like, they're next up. It's like they're already up. You know what I mean? But I think like if I could compare them to some, I think like I'm wearing Aloe Yoga right now. Like they're massive. They're probably doing high nine figures or something like that. Like,
Yeah.
right? They could be like that for sure. I'm sure like one day they will be a billion-dollar company. I think it's kind of cool. Tabs
Like those
chocolate.
guys, sorry, those guys were the ones that got me on Twitter. Like those were the guys that literally told me to join Twitter, maybe join Twitter, boosted me and helped me get my first 1,000 followers like within 24 hours for days. Like because of those guys, I'm on Twitter, and I think they said that their brand has done like 45 or $50 million since it started.
Yeah. Dude, it's so funny because you guys are such opposites online.
Very, very opposite. We were in a mastermind group. I met them through some buddies. This was probably 4 years ago. We would do monthly or kind of quarterly meetups, and they were a lot more tame and mellow in person than they were online. And again, this was pre a lot of the stuff they're doing now, so maybe they've changed. I haven't kept up with them as much, but because of them, I'm on Twitter, so I appreciate them.
Yeah, I love those guys. They're awesome. So they're definitely gonna crush. I think um Client Extension is gonna do really well. I think they're gonna be sort of like a Sam Ovens type thing in a couple of years. Because everyone kind of knows Sam or like even Hermosi, right? Everyone knows
Yeah,
Hermosi in the business world. I think like Fazio and the Knowledge X guys like Andre Christian Dan, I think they're all gonna be like pretty well known because they're just so good. Like they're just their product is just so good. They're and it's cool because the way they sell their program is sort of just like um, we're going to teach you how to do what we did to you to get you in here for your business. And we're making more money than you. So you should listen to us kind of thing. Where it's like, they can say like, yo, check how good this VSL is. And in the VSL, it's kind of like about how the business works, but also it's just, you're watching it going like, man, I wish my VSL was like this. I'm going to buy so I can learn from them. It's sort of weird, but it's funny. Like they're awesome. I'm going to their event in October for sure in Tampa, as long as they don't get wiped out by a hurricane. Fingers crossed. And then one more. I think shout out Ben Bader. His agency model, I think, is going to be like, I mean, him specifically, just because he's super fucking smart with an industry as an info, where like it's growing really fast. And there's a lot of people who are sort of coming up and all of a sudden just like starting businesses in month 6, they're making $1 million a month. And like he really knows how to grow that stuff. And there are people that are a couple years ahead of him in the game that are like on the agency side making millions a month. There's a guy who does something similar, like really similar to what Ben does, same sort of style of working with people, and he charges like 60 grand an hour for coaching calls or something like that, which I think is ridiculously overpriced, but it
Dang.
is. So I think, yeah, Ben's gonna cry. Like, dude, if he wants to grow his business, like Ben's kind of chilling. He's like one or two. He's one guy, and he's like the show, I guess. And then he partners with Sanjay, who does like some paid social stuff, and then he has a couple contractors who will write stuff for him. So like super low maintenance. If you wanted to build out a team and take it super seriously, I think you could easily do $1 million a month. But we'll see. We'll see. But
This
yeah,
is
man, I
fun.
think that's all I got.
This was fun. I like this one.
Yeah. Very good. Any final words, Chase?
No, let us know if you like it. We love the feedback. I think last week I got more feedback from just getting text from people and seeing people in person about this. So give us feedback. Hit us up on social, send us an email. Let us know if you're liking these.
All right. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Cardinal Mason on Twitter, TikTok, and YouTube, at Cardinal Mace on IG, and then at Ecom Chase Diamond, no A in Diamond.
Sounds good, brother. Appreciate you. Cheers.